Good morning, everybody. Time for a friendly chat. I got to thinking about an interesting word that we use a lot in our relationships is the word relationship. And we begin our relationships so very young. In fact, we begin it before we're born. We have a bond that as we float around, we hear mom's heartbeat and we watched something last night that talked about the importance of rhythm, why music is so important in our lives, because it's the rhythm that we hear before we're born. Mom's heart, we hear um, vibrations as mom moves around. It's just the beginning of what will be a big part of all of our lives as we go on, is relationships. And sometimes they're fractured and sometimes they're difficult. They all require certain traits that make them that enrich us. And some of those traits are ones that I work on, and that is acceptance and understanding and compassion. In a relationships in our marriage, our partners, the relationships can require an awareness that people are different and that we can't change anyone else but ourselves. If we expect something different from a relationship, and you've heard people say, well, if he loves me, he'll change, and that never works. It requires compromise. That's a hard one. Very often, I listen to people talk about their particular views, and they seem so locked in that this is the way they feel and the way they're going to stay that way. Nobody's going to change it because that's how they are, and that's okay. If it if it brings you peace of mind and you feel comfortable with the way you are, then I guess that's good. But when you're dealing with another human being who you live with, maybe, and you have differences, it can cause um, upsetments and stress. The only way it worked for me was I had to be a better person for myself. I had to be honest um, and recognize that uh, that I could learn from someone else and maybe see things differently, not be locked into my viewpoints and be able to say, you know, you've got a point, and I hadn't thought of that. When we have relationships with our kids, this becomes very important because, especially when they start to hit their teenage years, they have a mind of their own and they need time to break away. And that sounds so strange, but teenagers do that. They have to detach from their parents in order to develop themselves. So that relationship can get very, very um, frantic and stressful. So we look at relationships as something that exactly what we have to do. We have to look at them with different eyes, and we find that we're able then to cope and just to recognize that everybody goes through their own journey. Everybody travels their own path. And sometimes we're at points in relationships where they go different directions. I've had parents of children who felt they had to stay in a relationship with someone because they had children and that they didn't want their child to go through a, a fractured relationship or divorce. And that has to be discussed very carefully. And that's where counseling can help tremendously because a child has more resilience than we realize. We want to protect them, we want to keep them safe. But a child being brought up in a caustic relationship is not benefiting. Very often, then, that child in their relationships has no tools to be able to deal with it, to be able to heal, and to not make the same mistakes. When we know about abusive families, physically abusive, that very often a child grows up thinking that that's normal. So how we pass on our knowledge of relationships is exactly what they're going to take from that. We hope that it's going to be positive, which means there again, we have to know, we have to be honest with ourselves. So the compromises we make in relationships are different. They're not, it doesn't mean giving up myself. When I compromise, it means I use the term, how important is it? If it's something that I value, if it's asking me to change something that seems the most important thing to me, then that's not the kind of compromise that's going to make a strong relationship or a happy relationship. So there's where the honesty and the awareness of what's going on is so important. If I can look at it and say, it doesn't matter, I can do it this way. What if someone, it's a silly thing, like emptying the little basket in the sink. I have a marvelous husband, but he doesn't empty that basket. He does the dishes. So do I make an issue of it? Not worth it. And there are lots of them in a relationship. The way you fold clothes, the way you put things away, in the order that you put things away. How important is it? So that's what we have to do in order to enrich our relationships. And we do that not just in a relationship in your marriage, but our friendships that we have. When you can listen to someone's problems and maybe think you have the answer, sometimes it's best just to listen and not respond other than it sounds like you're going through a rough time, you know? And that relationship is very special because that's what we want in life. We want people that look at us and listen to us. And that's what I'm hoping is happening here. I wish I could listen to you more now. So if you tell me what it is you'd like to hear my views on, I'm ready to respond. And I will see you next week. Thank you.